Starting now.
Katie, if you could just move it on to slideshow.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Okay, so good morning, everybody, and welcome to our next webinar in the Robert Half Your Future series. So today we're talking about securing your next role. Today I'm joined by our expert panelists. We have our regular Emma Howard, we've got Martin Spencer, we've got Sam Elly, who was here last week, and we've got Steve Sully and Katie Lewis. I'm Victoria Sprott, I'm the talent director for Robert Half, and I've worked for Robert Half for the last 24 years, both as a recruiter and as a leader. So I was just wondering if the panelists could give a quick overview of their experience and expertise. So Emma, if you'd like to take us away.
I will, and I'll be brief. So hopefully for a lot of you I'll be familiar, but in case you haven't seen me before, I've had about 15 years worth of experience, makes me feel very old, in internal recruitment, external recruitment, and I currently work as a career coach helping people get their dream jobs.
Great, thank you very much, Emma. And Martin.
Yes, so good morning, everyone. I'm Martin Spencer. I'm an occupational psychologist. I've been working in the arena of talent management, leadership assessment, development all my life, either consulting or in various line HR roles. I've been an HR director a couple of times. And I run my own business now, specialising in the application, particularly of psychometrics in hiring, leadership assessment and development.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Martin. And Sam.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're well. My name's Sam Elly. I am a facilitator, coach, work in leadership development, and I've been doing that about 15, 16 years. Prior to that, worked for Deloitte in the financial services industry. Delighted to be with you.
Well, great to have you here. And our very own Steve Sully.
Yeah, hi everyone. Yeah, Steve Sully, as Victoria said. I am the operational director for our London business, primarily focused on the professional services side of things. And I was actually hired by Victoria. That's my interesting fact.
Thank you, Steve. And Katie Lewis.
A fact that I share because I was also recruited by Victoria. I've worked for Robert Half for 12 years. I was a consultant before moving into supporting the talent acquisition and staff development teams.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Well, you can see the breadth of expertise that we have today, so really looking forward to the next hour. So getting a new job or exploring the market is, for many of you today, the most important thing that needs to get done right now. And today we want to equip you with tips and tactics on how you can get yourself ready with things like your CV, your covering letter, how to structure your job search, amongst other things. So in order for us to gauge the thoughts and feelings of our audience today and bespoke our conversation to reflect this, we're going to be running a number of polls throughout the next hour. The question will pop up on the screen and you're just going to click the answer which is most relevant to you. As we progress through the webinar, there's bound to be questions that you're wanting to ask the panelists. What you need to do is you just need to submit those questions through the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen, and we will start answering them around about sort of 12:30. Katie will, in the meantime, collate and theme those questions, and we'll get through as many of them as we can. Please be assured that your participation in the polls is totally anonymous, and you can submit your questions anonymously as well. The call will be recorded for your information. Okay, so Katie, we're going to go straight into a poll and kick.
Yeah, so I'm just going to launch this now.
Okay.
Here we go.
Okay, so the poll question is, what is your current job status? So are you actively seeking work? Are you in a recruitment process? Are you passively looking? Or are you just happy where you are at the moment? So we'll just give that probably 40, 50 seconds for people to sort of think and participate. And we'll comment on the results.
Yeah, we're just reaching 35, so I'll just give it a few more seconds and then I'll...
Oh, the background noise there. Apologies, everybody. Okay, so what we have here is actively seeking work. We have a very large percentage of 69%. We've got 2% who are currently in a recruitment process. We've got 24% of the audience today who are, passively having a look, and we've got 4% of people where they're happy where they are, just looking for learning opportunities like today. So really interesting, and thank you for participating. So what I'd like to start off is from sort of Sam and maybe Martin's perspective, the first question, so which is going to come up on the screen, which is what are your, what are good coping mechanisms for those who are dealing with uncertainty in your role, and how do people become more psychologically resilient? Perhaps Katie, you could just pull the question up on the screen for me. That's okay. So Sam, would you like to lead off on that?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, everyone's going through a period of probably unprecedented for most people uncertainty at the moment, and have been over the last few months, and particularly if you're looking for a job, that's only going to be amplified. I think there's two things I'd like to talk about, two sides to it really. Firstly, what you can do in terms of behaviours, and what we can do about your mindset. Behaviours, and these are kind of common sense stuff that we don't always do. So behaviours kind of keep connected, keep surround yourself with people, and good people that are going to nourish you and give you the kind of confidence and give you ideas and give you that kind of sense of agency that you can get on with it. Keep healthy. It sounds when you're going through uncertainty and you want to be more resilient, looking after yourself, filling your body with the right kind of fuel, looking after yourself is important. And also keep learning. It's a great opportunity, especially if you're on furlough, got more time than normal, to actually branch out. And I suppose being on this call, for example, is one aspect of that. But there's so much out there that you can do to keep learning. That not only helps you become more employable, also just makes you fit, more resilient, feel better about it. And then in terms of mindset, I think when you're going through change and uncertainty, there's a temptation to think about loss. A lot of the reason that people think about change as a bad thing is a sense of loss. But actually, it's quite a good mindset to think about, look, there's a potential to gain here. We've all been through situations and thought, that things are tough, but we've also all been in situations knowing that we'll look back and laugh. People are already talking in my clients about lockdown nostalgia, looking back to elements of lockdown that were great, that promoted really good change. So that mindset of thinking about the good things in change. I'm not a really spiritual man, but there is something called the Serenity Prayer, which I love, and it says, grant me the serenity to accept change I can't affect, the courage to affect the change that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And that's the last bit of the mindset, which is to really focus on what can you do. Don't worry about the stuff you can't do anything about, because that's just going to beat you up and make you feel worse. Really seek out the stuff you can do to have an effect that's going to shift you forward. That's my sense. Martin, what would you add?
Yeah, I think that's great, Sam. I really agree with all of that. I think for me, first thing I'd say is if people are feeling uncertain, then recognize that is a really, really normal thing. Our brains are wired to feel uncomfortable with uncertainty, and it's something as part of the human condition. We don't like it. So first thing, normalize it. It's okay to kind of feel a bit uncertain and not too sure of things. And then just really picking up on what Sam said there, I think on the mindset side of things, I'm a passionate believer in something called PIG thinking, P-I-G thinking, PIG thinking. So try and focus on, when something's gone well, focus on the positive elements of it. Tell yourself about the things that have happened that are internal to you. So P for positive, I for internal, that went well. It went well because of me. And the G is global. It will happen all the time because of me. So try and think about when things go well, build on them, focus on the positive. It's not about telling yourself black is white or blue is yellow or something like that. It's about focusing on the positive things And likewise, when things don't go well, negative thoughts, try and externalize those, look for the reasons why things happen that were nothing to do with you, and make sure it's limited and local. So NEL thinking for things that haven't gone well. So when you've had rejections and setbacks, think about them, but recognize the things that happened that were outside of your control, and then come back to focus on the PIG thinking: positive, internal, global. That's what I'd add.
I love that. That's really, really good. So you've got the serenity prayer, you've got PIG thinking, and the L. That's really, really good. Thank you very much. So Katie, we're going to move now on to this second poll, and we're going to ask you the question, which is how would you rate your CV in promoting you and your skills? So how would you rate your CV in promoting you and your skills?
Launching this one now. There we go.
And you've got some choices here, which are: you think your CV is excellent, you think it's good, you think it's average, or you think it's poor. So again, like before, we're just going to give you sort of 45 seconds to sort of think about that and participate. And Katie, if you'd like to let us know when we're probably at capacity of polling, then we'll move on to the panelist questions.
Give it 10 more seconds, I think. Looks like we're almost done. If anyone else wants to vote, there we go. One or two more coming in there.
Okay.
And I'll just close it down now. So I'll just end the polling now.
That's great.
Here we go.
And we'll move on to the next up. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so how would you rate your CV? So over half of you think it's good. You've got about 30% who think it's average. You've got 7% who think it's poor, and you've got 10%, well done everybody, who thinks it's excellent. Okay, so relevant to that poll, the next sort of couple of questions are really based around that CV. So Katie, if you could move on to the next question. So from
glitch in the
Sam, from your perspective,
there we go.
okay, yeah. So Sam, from your perspective, from talking to leaders, what is going through their minds when they're actually looking to hire somebody?
Yeah, don't worry, by the way, everyone, I won't be leading off on every question, but yeah, I'm having a lot of conversation with leaders at the moment, and they are, they're not a homogenous group all thinking the same. They are like, humans, they're all thinking different things, but the things I'm getting a lot are a lot worried, a lot of frustration, a lot of uncertainty. Some people are flying through lockdown. Most people have kind of got some stuff going on they're having to deal with at the moment. The themes I'm getting though are real worry about their people not being able to be in the same room and same building as their people. They're taking on a lot of them are taking on extra responsibility for looking after not only workload objective setting, the kind of personal side, and that's weighing on us. Some people aren't used to that, and it's weighing on some people's minds. So in terms of what I'm guessing they're looking at when recruiting, they're looking after people that kind of get the balance right, and the balance right between, say, being self-reliant and being able to get on with it, but also not suffering in silence, because they don't want people who are going to take on too much and burn out. And at the same time, they want people who kind of can kind of be efficient and effective and get on with stuff, but know how to balance their workload. So it's that kind of real balance. They want to have people that bring issues to them and not afraid to speak up, but not people that are going to be sucking all the time that they've got. So it's finding people who are really good at that blend, being especially remote managed.
Yeah, definitely.
Steve, you're probably speaking to a lot of people specifically who are recruiting at the moment. So what would you add?
Yeah, I think probably a slightly more basic answer, and something I've noticed, and you made a comment at the beginning around that nostalgia. One of the really positive things that I've seen is that I think as a business, we always prided ourselves at Robert Half on helping clients pick the best possible candidate for a role. But I think more so than ever, we're seeing that in its purest sense now. And the reason why I say that is because so many of us, that are on this call that may have been fortunate enough to work remotely through this period, have adapted so quickly, and in some cases probably performed better than they were pre-COVID, just because it's enabled you to run your household, run your family, run your life together with work better than previously. Is that it's almost taken geography out of an employer's mind when they're recruited now. So where in the past you'd maybe look at where someone lived and took their commute or how long it was going to take them to get home of an evening into account, now it really is the best person for the job in a lot more cases. We've never before have we ever placed payrollers to work for clients in London that have been based, sat in their kitchen in Glasgow. So I think that's the positive message that I want to get out there. And my top tip would be maybe, if you're looking for a job, and I know there's a large population on this call or webinar that are looking for a role, is maybe read the job descriptions and see where clients are a lot more open-minded, people working remotely or out of the local area. And keep an eye out for that. But yeah, geography, I think, in a large number of cases is completely irrelevant now.
Well, as you say, Steve, that's really encouraging, and certainly something that we're seeing across the industry. So thank you very much, both of you. So moving on to more specifically a CV, the next question is around, a question that we get asked a lot is, what does a good CV really look like, or an executive summary look like? Katie, if you could just move on to the next question.
Slide deck is a little bit...
Yeah, that's okay, no problems. So what does a good CV or an executive summary look like? And I guess since COVID, what are the areas that our employers really focusing on since the pandemic? So perhaps Martin, you could lead this off.
Yeah, sure. So first thing to say is it's really good that many people on this call think their CVs are in a good shape, a good place. That's fantastic. I think what I would say, from having seen thousands of them through my life, I dread to think how many, it's your CV. There is no accepted formula for what the CV should look like. But there are loads and loads online. So if you're in any doubt, look at other examples. You will see them. They pop up almost every day. I saw one pop up yesterday. Lots of people have got good formats. There's no one format. But having said all of that, the things I always used to like and would still look for are keep it brief. So I would say 2 pages max. I would say make sure you've got a summary of your key achievements that comes early on in the CV, because like it or not, most recruiters are impatient and they may just look at it for a couple of seconds. So put something at the top of it to which their eyes will be drawn. Be brief in your work history, summarize it with bullets, major on your more recent experience at the beginning of your CV, less detail on the things you did 30 years ago, and something short but interesting on the more personal side of your life. Practically, I'd say make sure it hasn't got any mistakes in it. So even if you think your CV is great, give it to somebody else to read it, because you'd be amazed how easy it is to make a mistake, and it's just not worth doing it. So don't do that. I'd also say make sure you've got several. So alter them, vary them. Don't just have one standard one, but be prepared to tweak it and change its emphasis. I don't mean misrepresent and lie. Never do that. But certainly just make sure the things that are relevant to the job you're interested in are accentuated in your CV. And some of the most impressive I've seen have been where people have really made an effort to stand out. So for example, I knew somebody who applied for a high street magazine role in journalism, and they altered their CV to look exactly like the front cover of the last edition. And they mimicked exactly the layout and all of the format. And that was their CV. It's completely creative, wacky, and it absolutely got them that role. So, there are ways of drawing the recruiter's eye to you in a unique and special way. I'd also say, don't put buzzwords in it. A number of times I've read people are flexible, adaptable, strategic. Try and think of interesting words that describe you, not just plain ones. with regard to here and now and COVID, I think just put yourself in the sort of mindset of the employer, as Sam was saying, what people are thinking about at the moment. Think about the skills that are relevant to employers at the moment. Think about, flexibility. Think about being able to work remotely. Emphasize that. Show that you've thought about the particular challenges that may be unique to the sector that you're applying in. And really, above all else, emphasize your flexibility and resilience. That's what I'd say. But Emma, I'm sure you've got views and thoughts as well. So over to you.
Not really, Martin. That was fairly comprehensive, to be honest with you. The thing I would say to all of you, there's three things. The first is make it relevant. So I absolutely agree with Martin. If you're going for something in a creative field, make sure your CV is creative. However, I used to hire accountants, and I did used to go through a period of time where people would send massive movie star kind of photos of themselves, which wasn't necessarily helpful. Do make sure it's beautiful though. Do make sure it's kind of appropriate for the audience. The other thing I would say is work out whether you're going into an ATS system. And when I say an ATS system, I mean an applicant tracking system. And there's a reason for that. You have to use the buzzwords that are used in the job description, because often they are set up to actually select as you go through. If it is going through an agency, or if it's going through a kind of a slightly more direct route, you don't need to do that, but you do need to make sure that you're actually really basing your application and your summary on the job description that you are applying for, so it pulls through. They won't read through, as Martin says, to find out what you've put there. And then last but not least, to keep it brief, cover letters. Underrated, really, really underrated for certain jobs. A very brief kind of half-page cover letter around why you're relevant can really help a recruiter decide whether they're going to read through the whole CV or not. So that's something that I would really encourage you to do for the right audience, but do make sure that it's appropriate for the job that you're applying for.
Yeah, I think that to portal or applicant tracking system is a really, really good point, and one that not many people will have really thought about. So thank you both. So the next question, so question 4 we're going to move on to, is still focusing on the CV, but how do you get across your soft skills well in your CV? So we've talked a little bit more about the sort of the factual achievement element, but the soft skills side, perhaps Sam, given your background, you could lead this one.
Yeah, thanks, Victoria. I don't know who the artist was, but there was an 80s song talking about ain't what you do, it's the way that you do it. Apologies if I've misquoted that slightly, but there's a sense of that here, and I completely agree with Martin's point about CVs, about having your key achievements, but that's not enough, and I think you have to do a bit of sleuth work to find out what are the soft skills that are required of the role and of the industry and of the specific organisation, whatever you can get. And then it's a case of describing those achievements using a more descriptive way. So example I've got is, rather than saying, for example, managed client relationships, you've got something like building trusted relationships through responding quickly and collaborating effectively with colleagues. It's not, you're trying to really build a flavour of how you did it, not just what you did, and bring it to life a bit, and trying to respond to the skills that they're after. So not just explain what you do, but also how you do it, I think is key for me. Steve, again, from the actual recruitment in the industry world, have you got something to add there?
Yeah, so I'll probably just start by just defining what soft skills are, just for those of you out there that maybe don't know what we're talking about there. But yeah, to Sam's point, we're looking at sort of what you do or what and how you do it. But you're looking at things like communication, teamwork, problem solving, work ethic, time management, those sorts of things. And I think the best way for me, or the CVs that I enjoy reading the most, are the ones where within, to Martin's point around the key achievements, you kind of mix in your soft skills into how you solve the problem, what your role was within the team that solved that problem, how you delivered it. And that should help you kind of get some real tangible examples of how you prove that you are a problem solver, that you are good in a team, without simply having a section of soft skills and listing them the same as everyone else does. my boss, Chris Lawton, actually, so his test for soft skills specific to getting a role in recruitment would be something he calls the 4 C's, which I've picked up and I use myself. So he talks about coachability as the first C, which I think is very, very important to employers in terms of getting across, do you take direction, how quick you're going to learn, how are you actually going to learn. So I think being able to maybe work to this model would be a good thing as well. The second C being commercial acumen. So yeah, we, clearly when we price our services, that's a big part of how we put things together. There's a certain price that we like to target for the value that we add. He talks about character, and character defined as how you behave when no one's watching, which I always think is quite a powerful soft skill to have. And then lastly, commitment, around sort of getting across how resilient you've been, where you've got through a challenge, where you've stuck at something and come out the other side. Because, a lot of roles when you first start, you're going to go through some challenging times. So, yeah, big, long list of soft skills there. But if you can try and intertwine the 4 C's where relevant and stick to that, I don't think you could go far wrong with your CV.
Yeah, great structure for people to build their CV and preparation on. So thanks very much to you both. So we're going to move on to the third poll. So poll 3 now is more around sort of how prepared you feel. Katie, if you could move it on, that would be great. Thank you. So how prepared you feel about your next opportunity. So a number of you are obviously actively seeking work out there. So, or if you're passively looking, if that opportunity came about, how ready do you feel? So do you feel, very confident? Do you feel confident? Do you feel unsure? Or you just don't feel not sure at all, not at all prepared? So again, like before, we'll just give you 30-40 seconds to think about your answers and participate in that respect. And Katie, if you can let me know when we're at capacity.
Another few seconds now, and right, I think we're done. So I'm just going to end the polling now. There we go. And nice. There you go.
Okay, so we've got how prepared, we've got 9% very, we've got 44% at confident, we've got 42 at unsure, and we've got 5% not at all. So it's great to see that, nearly half are feeling sort of confident about their preparation. So that's good news. So moving on to the next question. So what are the employers and agencies expecting in a good covering letter, and what are the main mistakes that people make with them? And again, if there's anything with special consideration sort of post-COVID, then that would also be useful. So perhaps Steve, from a recruitment angle, you could kick this off.
Yeah, so I would say this is quite a simple one to answer, and Emma alluded to it earlier on as well, is that the very best covering letters are the ones that are very specific to a job description, the ones where a candidate has really taken time out to understand the job description, understand how their experiences fit that, where they've done parts of the job description before, and written that letter to the job description and to the hiring manager in a very succinct way. I suppose the biggest mistakes are the ones where everyone knows that a covering letter is a good thing, but you write it in a very generic one-stop shop way that isn't specific to a job description and can almost go against you negatively, because it could be seen as almost being a bit lazy and not taking time out to really understand the job description. In terms of post-COVID considerations, I think I've read more covering letters and seen more covering letters than I ever have in my career. And I was fortunate or unfortunate enough to start in 2008, right in the middle of another recession. But I think maybe it's advice out there in the internet, maybe it's content shared and watched on LinkedIn. But I think all of us, and candidates included, are realising that to make yourself stand out from ever increasing crowd against ever decreasing opportunities, that covering letter is really going to help you stand out and get a shot at an opportunity that you really want.
Yeah.
But Martin's probably got some good comments on that. He had some great ones on the executive summary. It's quite similar.
Yeah, it is, and thanks, Steve. And yeah, it's been covered a little earlier as well. But this issue of the covering letter, in my experience, people often see it as a bit of a burden and a bit of a pain. You know, I've got a CV, that's nice and easy. I've got that. I know I can send it off. Oh no, I've got to write a covering letter for this one. And I think if we do that, we're looking at it in the wrong way. See the covering letter as the opportunity, as Steve has just said, to really accentuate why this job is good for you and why you're a fantastic candidate. Don't see it as a chore. Do put effort and energy into it, because that could be the thing that differentiates you in a marketplace where there are going to be lots and lots of people, sadly, looking for fewer roles. So that would be the way in which I'd approach it. Have your CV, tailor it like we said earlier on, but don't underestimate the importance of this covering letter. Don't see it as, oh dear, I've got to do that as well. See it as, actually, this is a real opportunity for me. But when you do it, keep it brief, keep it sharp, same rules, no mistakes, give it to somebody else, all of those things, let them check it, that kind of thing. And just make sure that you take every opportunity to differentiate, show why you're enthusiastic, show why you're relevant for that job.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think they're great advice given there. So thank you. So moving on to more on the next question is more about the sort of, with so many people beginning to have to look for work, you know, what advice would you give with regards to what does a structured job search entail? Because there's a lot to do in it. So, you know, what advice, perhaps Emma, you know, you could give here?
Yeah. So when I was thinking about this question, there's kind of 4 areas that I normally advise people to look at and to kind of do. So I'm going to run through them fairly quickly so that we can answer some questions. The first one is LinkedIn. So I know that, you know, we all kind of LinkedIn out at the moment, but please make sure that your description actually matches what's happening for you at the moment. So I know I've spoken to a couple of people this week who've got completely wildly different things on their LinkedIn from, you know, what you would expect. I'd also really warn all of you about putting just the phrase immediately available in your job title, because the question is immediately available what? So, you know, there's lots of seminars out there at the moment around how to make that stand out. So that's the first one. Through LinkedIn, I'd really encourage you all to start thinking about your contacts that you've already got. So a huge amount of people find work through kind of referrals from friends of a friend. So do start thinking about who you can reach out to, who you already know, people who you've worked with before, people might want to give you recommendations or might want to get you in where there technically isn't a job vacancy. That's a really powerful way to kind of start doing it. The third is then what I like to call kind of targeted search yourself. So what I have certainly done with people before is made a list of either locations that they can work in, and we've searched the companies in those areas, a particular type of organisation they want to work in, or a particular type of sector, and almost kind of mapped the market ourselves and then gone to their direct websites and really seen what's there. And then the fourth one, but equally important, particularly as this is a Robert Half seminar, is the agency support. And I would really urge all of you who are looking for work at the moment, please don't scattergun through agencies. I'm sure Steve will say this, and I'll probably pass on to him in a second as well. But, you know, it isn't helpful to have your details with 10 agencies. I think we're really seeing at the moment those organisations that are able to step up from a candidate perspective and those who aren't. Realistically, I would do a cull. And for myself, I normally say kind of a maximum of 2 to 3 agencies, and make sure you've got that connection with the recruiters so they know what you're looking for as well. I mean, Steve, does that, and I know I put agencies last, but just simply to move through it, does that kind of echo what you think as well?
Yeah, no, I think that's perfect. And I would just say, like, a structured job search for me is one which is very measured. So it's not about applying for as many jobs as you can in the hope that you land one of them. It is very much about knowing exactly what your skill set is, knowing exactly where you want your career to go. And I know that can be tough when you are out of work, but don't forget that there's an interim market that can help you whilst you get your perm search back on. But there's nothing worse from a recruitment consultant's perspective, or I'm sure from Emma's perspective, if she's sort of I know she's ran sort of big recruitment drives where you have the same candidate applying for pretty much all of the jobs, which are very different. You can't be relevant to all of those jobs. So I would keep it very, very measured. My other tip would be as well is to make sure you document and keep a record of everything that you're applying for as well. Not only will that enable you to kind of, I'm a list writer and a ticker, so it'll give you the opportunity to feel good about yourself and know that you've achieved some things at the end of every day, every week, but also as well, it'll hopefully try and alleviate those embarrassing moments where a recruitment consultant or Emma as a senior person in HR calls you back because they're interested in you and you can't remember applying for the job or can't remember what the job is. And my last tip around this as well, and Sam mentioned it at the beginning, but I would talk to people. It's an age-old sort of joke in our industry in recruitment that people only ever sort of talk to their friends and their family when they've found a job. No one ever talks when they're looking for a job. And you'd be amazed that, if you've made certain mistakes and had a bit of feedback, if you talk about that with people, we all know more than ever that it's good to talk, but you might get some great little hints and tips from your friends and family that will help you hone your skills a little bit and maybe, not make the same mistake again on the job that you really, really want.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I can see that we're getting a lot of questions through the Q&A and the chat. So I think, we want to be able to make this personal to you. So Katie, I'm going to hand over to you to work through as many questions as we can in the next sort of 20 minutes or so.
Oh, we'll get as many as we can done. The first question, I think, Emma, you might like to answer this one. Is, do you think ageism plays a part in a client's mindset when looking for a suitable employer? I've had a couple of roles which I applied for saying they're looking for someone young and dynamic, not an accountant with 30 years experience in various sectors because I'm approaching 50.
Yeah, so this one is one very close to my heart, and I'd like to point out to everybody that actually statements like young and dynamic are actually illegal in the UK. It is illegal to be asked for your age. It is illegal to be discriminated against on the basis of age. So this question is one that I really wanted to put my hands up because I would like to say to you all, no, you shouldn't be discriminated against. And certainly when I've run very big recruitment drives, I'll be honest with you, some of the best candidates have been the most experienced and the older ones, and we've been very, very happy to have them. I do think that if this is happening for you, you need to have quite an open conversation with that organisation because what they're doing is illegal. It is against the law, and that can be something that would be very helpful to be pointed out to them. Equally, if they are not willing to look at somebody like yourself with that amount of experience and that amount of knowledge, I would suggest they're not the employer for you, and they're possibly not the employer for anyone. So I know that sounds harsh, but this type of ageism and discrimination is something that we really need to start to stamp out. It's completely inappropriate. So I'm very sorry you've had that experience.
Thank you, Emma. Moving on to the next question. I think we were talking about tailoring CVs to roles earlier. As this question is, as I keep amending my CV to tailor it to a specific job role, I find it hard to sell myself as well as I would like. Could we just talk about the advice on that? I don't know who wants to take that question.
Yeah, I think it probably sounds like you're amending too much of the CV. When we talk about tailoring CVs, it is literally just, again, I'm a finance recruiter, so you're looking at kind of certain processes, systems, or deliverables within a job description. It's just kind of that job description should help you tweak, because getting everything you've ever done in your career on a CV is a tough task in itself. But if a job description is asking for 3 or 4 key things, it really is only just making sure that you tweak the CV if you've actually done those things to include those relevant things that are going to get you a shot at interviewing for the role, and just making sure that you give clear examples around the key elements of the job description as well to prove that you've done those things in the past. That they're the things that will help you get past that sort of first part of the process. But yeah, changing too much of your CV, rewriting executive summaries, rewriting your CV every time, I can imagine that becoming quite tiresome and probably quite tough to keep up, as I said, in logging what you're doing and where you're sending your CV. So just the key things.
Thanks, Steve. Next question. Having been out of work for just over 4 months, will this go against me? So I don't know if that might be something, again, Steve, that you might be able to advise on.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. I mean, it's an overused phrase, but these really are unprecedented times. And, you know, horrible feeling to be out of work for that amount of time, but there are literally, in my own experience, hundreds, maybe even thousands of candidates that I've spoke to personally over the last 4 or 5 months of being in this situation that are in the exact same spot. So I think, you know, a COVID gap, so to speak, on anyone's CV for years to come will never be looked at in a negative way. And as I said, you know, there's the interim market. Even if you've been a permanent member of staff your entire career, don't forget to utilize that interim market right now to as a stopgap almost, to wait for your perfect role to come back up, gain some new skills, look at some new systems, work with some new people. There are various different routes that you can take right now.
Thank you, Steve. The next question is from someone who's offshore at the moment and just trying to get home to a job enabling them to see their family. Wants to know if companies are really getting back to work now. Can't get a feel for this looking at the news and social media from outside of the country. So who would like to answer that question?
I think it really depends. To say she's overseas at the minute, I think it really depends what country she's in. We've been quite fortunate, without getting too sort of technical, because tax implications and all that sort of thing come into play. But we've been quite fortunate. We've had a number of Antipodean candidates that took the first opportunity to get home whilst they could. They made arrangements with their employers that they were working interim through for us to carry on working overseas. So I think if there's a proven track record, there's an opportunity to do that, or more so. I still think, being completely honest, might be quite tough if you're overseas to land a job here in the UK, regardless of what I've said about geography, just because of the tax implications and various things like that to be concerned about. But more than happy to pick up with you directly. Drop me a note on LinkedIn and we can talk it through and get to the granular detail of what your situation actually is.
Yeah, and if I can just add to that, there are companies that actually do relocations, so from one country to another for fees. It'd be worthwhile doing that. I certainly wouldn't expect a UK-based recruitment organisation to be able to support a kind of transatlantic move at the moment. And of course, the other thing to do is, the risk of sounding flippant, come back. If you've got right to work in the UK, then apply once you're back. It makes it much easier.
Excellent, thank you. So the next question is with regard to industry experience. Is this still relevant? My background is in the travel industry, which has been severely hit. So I'll be looking to diversify, but many job roles are still requesting industry experience, which rules me out from the start. Who would like to answer that question?
You know, I'd say a couple of things on that. I think approach a job with the mindset of I can because I have. And think about where your experience and background actually does match what's required, even if it isn't specifically actually word for word the same. You think about, you know, I can do that because I've worked in a very similar space. So don't rule yourself out because it's different, but then actively think about where the sort of jump off points are and make a case for why you should be taken seriously. So that would be my approach. But you know, don't approach applying for a job with the mindset of they won't be interested or I shouldn't apply, because as soon as you've done that, you know, you've lost the game, haven't you? So do approach it with the mindset of you never know, let's have a go, and be more positive about it. So don't count yourself out before you've even started. Look for the opportunity and have the mindset, I can because I have.
I think as well, it's thinking about how to frame that. You know, you can frame that in a positive light. I was speaking one of my clients this week, talking about in their industry, in their team, everyone has grown up in that industry. And at a time where creative thinking and doing things in different ways really being valued, they didn't feel like they were getting it because they just grown up in this industry. If you're applying to a different industry, you might be able to sell that as in, I might think in different ways. I'm bringing a new perspective. I'm bringing in a new experience that will be valuable. So think about how to sell that different experience as well.
Thank you, Sam. So next question, bear with me a second, sorry. Slightly off topic, but as my sector is becoming more automated, I'm looking to retrain. Are there opportunities for mature candidates to gain on job training? Emma, would you like to answer that one?
Not my area of expertise, but yes, I believe there are at the moment. So my understanding is that the government is supporting a large range of kind of back to work schemes, and it's also looking at, if you can do, apprentice schemes. So depending on what you want to move back into, apprentices we often think of as being teenagers. Actually, the oldest apprentice I've ever taken on was 58. So it can be a fantastic way to get back into a different industry, and to kind of do that. But yeah, if you want to, and I'm sure we've got these kind of connections, if you Google that as well, there are lots of kind of government-led initiatives at the moment that are around getting people back into areas of work that previously have been untapped, I suppose. But yes, that's definitely an option.
Does anyone else want on that one? Okay, thank you. I'm just having a quick look down the questions to see. There's quite a few with regard to the cover letter. In the cover letter, can we include the achievements in the same way as we've done in the CV?
No, I wouldn't duplicate it. So if you think that and Martin will probably have a much better view of this than me, but the cover letter for me is what equips you for that particular job. So what you don't want to do is list all of your achievements and then flip into your CV and it lists exactly the same. The cover letter is short, punchy, and really relates to why they should look at your CV. It isn't just a copy of it. Martin, is that where you're at as well?
Completely agree. Like I said earlier, make the cover letter work for you. Add more value than your CV and really make it focused. But I violently agree. Short, focused, positive, enthusiastic. Why you can't look past me is really the kind of mindset you need when you're writing one of those.
Yeah. Could I also take, there's one there I can see that's around, you say cover letters are underrated when they're used in the recruitment process. If ATS is used to filter out candidates initially, are we not just repeating what we've stated in the executive summary? No, so that's a couple of different things. So if you remember, we were talking about getting really clear around what type of role you're applying for and what the system is that you're going through. So a lot of ATSs now actually ask for a cover letter as well. That is something that you can upload. But if you are applying for a high volume job, and it just says, it's going through a Taleo or something else, and there isn't a request for a cover letter, don't feel you have to send one. It just means that you have to make sure your executive summary does that initial attraction job for you, if all they're looking at is your CV. But that will very much depend on what the process is that you're going through, and you'll be able to see that when you log into it.
Okay, thank you, Emma.
No worries.
I have a question here. Would you still advise sticking to 2 to 3 recruiters when looking at senior roles? Had a bad experience with an agency when I initially stuck to a few recruiters. I found the need to expand my network. I wonder, Steve, what would you advise when people are searching and using agencies?
Yes, it's a tough one, but I still do believe, from my own personal experience, that getting to know 2 or 3 agents better, helping them to get to know you and what you're actually looking for is a better way to go. If you're a rarer commodity and fewer people are out there sort of spamming your details, you're more likely for that agent to invest time in proactively marketing you to their clients and helping you find a role, but also just spending the time on your side to help them understand you and what you're looking for as well. They're going to be better placed, when clients have questions around your motives, your objectives, etc., to be able to answer them for you. Whereas, there is the risk if you register with too many agents that your CV gets sent to irrelevant jobs and it kind of damages your brand in the market when you're looking for a role.
Thank you. I'm just having a look through down now. I think we're pretty much
Can I, sorry to interrupt, someone's just asked, I don't understand the immediately available point re LinkedIn. And what I meant by that is when you've got when you're on LinkedIn and you've got your title, you've got your headline around what you are, a lot of people at the moment are putting it immediately available in that box. It means that no one can see what your actual job is. All you can see when I see your profile is immediately available. I don't know whether you're an immediately available HR consultant, don't know if you're immediately available ACA, don't know if you're immediately available project manager. So please do just make sure after the immediately available bit, you put what your job title is so that people can approach you with relevant opportunities.
I think it's really, really important if you are looking for a role at the minute, whether you like kind of apps or various different platforms, LinkedIn when you're looking for a role is really important at the minute. So making sure that you've gathered as much advice as you can from the internet or from friends, family, recruitment agents, and really polish up your LinkedIn profile, because there are so many internal talent teams that will use that as their main go-to source for candidates. And equally, whilst you're tidying up, I made this sort of point earlier on, when you're tidying up your LinkedIn to make it look uber professional and uber ready to go and be the candidate that a client selects, is do the same thing on your own social media, your Facebook, your Twitter, and all that stuff, and make sure that paints you in the best possible professional light, because clients will do a sweep of your social media to see what you've been up to and try and get a first impression before they've met you. So make sure that's on point as well.
So I think, Katie, we've got time for sort of 2 or 3 more questions.
Great, okay. One here, is it frowned upon by recruiters if you prefer interim work whilst deciding the direction and next step in your career as a mid-senior level candidate? Is it regarded as non-committal or flaky?
What was that? Sorry, Katie?
Is it frowned upon by recruiters if you prefer interim work whilst deciding the direction and next step in your career? Is it regarded as non-committal or flaky?
Oh, that's a tricky one. That is a tricky one, because I think there's non-committal and flaky. They're probably quite powerful words, but if you've been an interim for a long period of time, that normally means that you've made that choice to be a professional interim. So I think clients, and Emma maybe has got a better view of this, but clients could, going back to my 4 C's, question your commitment and your longevity and how long are you going to stay with a business and grow. Not to say that you wouldn't be considered for the role, but are you just in the role because there's a short-term project you're really excited to work on, and then you're off to the next thing, and that business is going to lose the investment in training you, developing you, and the knowledge that walks out of the door when you leave. So I think not that it should, but the honest answer is yes, it can do.
So I'm just going to add to that, and I would, for once, it's unusual, I would disagree with Steve. So I've hired people who've done a lot of interim work for permanent roles, and I've hired people to do interim work who've had a lot of permanent experience. I think it comes down to something Steve put really well about being really clear around what you're doing and why. So if, for example, you are a career interim and all of a sudden you are applying for jobs now that are permanent, you need to be able to articulate why it is that you're now going for those permanent roles, having had a successful interim career, because that will look like we're in the middle of COVID, I'm just trying to lock something down and I'll be gone. But if you can get really clear, and this is where writing a cover letter, even if they don't want you to send one, is a really great way for you to get clear in your mind why you want that role, what you're going to bring, and what you can add to the organisation that you're joining. But yeah, I think it all depends on how you phrase it on your CV.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Sam.
Just one other point to make, Katie, and I don't know if there'll be a question there related to this, and I'm sure every single person on the call at some point has done a Zoom quiz with their friends and family, but my tip would be to practice video interviewing as quickly as you can, because I think the video interview is going to be here for the rest of COVID. And maybe with some clients, given how much they've used it and how effective it's been, how much time it's saved them, could be here indefinitely as part of an interview process. But trust me, and we've all been there, and I'm sure my panelists will agree with me as well, is that the first time you switch on your camera to do this sort of thing, or the interview, and the pressure's on, it's almost as nerve-wracking, even more so, doing it in this way than when you're sat face to face and you've got that ability to pick up on body language and rapport, etc. So I think getting practiced with the various platforms out there, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Google Hangout, and practicing talking to your friends, even if it's a catch up at the end of the day and what you've been up to, get comfortable with being uncomfortable on video, because it's going to be here for a good period of time to come, I'd say.
So I think one more, Katie, and then we'll draw it to a close.
Yeah, there's lots of questions flooding through now. So this is an interesting one. Are you finding at the moment that many companies are going through the recruitment process and then you find the role is put on hold? It's a picture with regard to companies recruiting.
Yeah, we've had a lot of that, just because I think business at the minute, the economy is a moving target. So what looks like a vital and urgent hire today, the next update, the next stage in COVID can change that quite quickly. But on the more positive side of things, and trying to stay on that side, we've seen more processes that were halted and stopped at the beginning of COVID now come back round, because there have been green shoots of recovery within that particular business's industry or the business in general. So I think there's been more processes start up than being put on hold, and that's kind of indicative in the number of candidates we've had out on interview, and those stats growing week on week since the beginning of COVID.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve. We got time for any more, Victoria?
I think maybe one quick one. Just to be assured, if you have submitted a question today, I think we've had the best part of, with the chat as well, probably about 40. It's obviously very difficult for us to get through all of them. Be assured in the next 48 hours, you will get a response from our panelists. So we will come back to you on those questions. We just can't answer all of them, unfortunately, today. Yeah, so one more, Katie, then.
I think this is a good one with regard to remote interviews. What about if your internet lets you down in the middle of a remote interview? What do you do?
I think inevitably it's gonna happen. Every single one of us at some point during this has had technical issues. I think even Sam was saying that the beginning of today is his Wi-Fi wasn't working. I had it on my team startup this morning. I think these things are gonna happen, but I wouldn't let that enter your mindset before starting an interview process. The chances of it happening, I would say, are less likely than likely. So just focus on the interview. You can always log back in. You can always reschedule. These things are gonna happen. Tech is brilliant when it works. But the fact of the matter is, tech has moved from being our best friend to a family member. So we've got to embrace it, whether it works or not.
I'd say, as Steve said, I got personal experience this time last week in the webinar. My internet cut out towards the end, which was very embarrassing for me. All I'd say is just test it and just put some live TV streaming through just to test the connection before just so it gives you a bit of peace of mind. And if all else fails, people tend to understand.
Yeah, and have your phone on silent, but as a backup, because sometimes your telephone connection is sometimes better than your laptop internet connection. So that's worst of all, a mobile number you could call them.
Yeah, and I would just say as well is present yourself in the same way as you present yourself in an interview. I'm not sure that necessarily means a full suit and tie. I think maybe the days of the suit and tie have gone. But if you're recruiting through an agent or recruiting, HR have got in touch with you, I would just double check how they'd like you to present yourself as well. It certainly definitely is not beachwear. We've had some really funny stories, some shocking stories, but present yourself well and try and get yourself on a fairly bland backing as well. So no sort of clothes hanging around the place or football posters and things like that. Just try and get yourself a nice blank wall and dress appropriately.
Thanks. So the clock is beating us. As I said, if you have submitted a question, I assure you we'll be back to you with an answer from our panelists. So many takeaways today. I think I really like the Serenity Prayer. I love the PIG and the NEL and acronyms, and it clearly is evident that the covering letter has not died. It's really, really important. So first of all, a massive thank you to our panelists, Emma, Martin, Sam and Steve for your insights, and Katie for all your tech support today. Next week's webinar is Workplace Culture, where our panelists are going to explore your next company. How do you look for good, strong diversity and inclusion? What are the trends that we're seeing sort of post-COVID? What does culture look like now? What questions to ask in an interview? What should flexibility be like? Work-life balance. So a real host and blend of advice for you. So thank you very much for attending today. Hope to see you between 12 and 1 next Wednesday. Have a great Wednesday afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. Bye-bye. Good luck. Bye-bye.
Bye.